Hey there, Rubus Trevor here. I'm going to experiment with streaming on the old YouTube on my Not Just a Toy channel. Apparently, I've left a big stick by my feet. That's a good sound. Okay. Anything else going to make any awful noises before I proceed? Just me. So yeah, Rubus Trevor here. I'm going to get the contents from Conquest magazine, episode 1 and 2, and I'm going to cut them up and glue them together and maybe demonstrate some of the painting and such. If you've just come in and you're like, geez, this guy's talking to himself a lot, I'm also recording this, so there's context. I think that if it was just me talking without the recording purpose and me thinking that I might use this in a video, then I'd just clam up, because that's what happens when I stream. Anyway, this is a practice, so I should carry on with the practice. So as I was saying, I am intending to cut up the contents from Conquest magazine, and then just basically go through that process and give the streaming a bit of a go. Hopefully it won't all conk out. So you get 3, these are Plague Marines. They might not immediately look like Plague Marines if you're familiar with 40k, because they're massive. For context, this is one of the old Plague Marines. This is one of the new Plague Marines. So you literally cannot use them in a unit with each other. These fellas look like they haven't ever eaten. Unless that's their gimmick, being Plague Marines. They could be emaciated ones. I don't know. They don't work in a unit with each other anymore. And they did once upon a time. You could buy only the one sort of Plague Marine, so that's going to match. So yeah, as I was saying before I rudely interrupted myself, you get 3 massive Plague Marines that the moment you buy, you have to sort of change all of your Plague Marines, because these guys are massive. That came in the second magazine, and in the first one, you got 3 Primaris Space Marines, which is pretty good value for £2. The second magazine was $3.99 or $4.99, so it starts being less good value, but considering 7 badly cast Plague Marines from Games Workshop are like probably a minimum of £25. It's really good value, and the special weapons, which inevitably you'd end up paying more for. So I'm gonna cut these out, and then I'm gonna glue them together in solitude. It looks like. Hello, the one person watching. In fact, I bet that's the thing I just opened up to monitor me. Yep. Okay, so I'm just going to cut everything out and live dangerously. Then I will open up the magazine and sort all of the bits out. If it was a more complicated kit with lots of very similar parts, that would be a path to madness, as I experienced the first time I opened a packet of Games Workshop Guardsmen, and I cut all of the parts out before realising that all of the arms were pairs, and they matched each other, and if you didn't match them, then they wouldn't hold the guns properly at the wrist. And that's why my first group of Imperial Guardsmen, none of them can hold their weapons properly, and it's about 20 of them. So I won't be showing you my Imperial Guard army, at least not those models. I nearly made an accident with this face last time, because it's got like a little nubbin attached to its neck. I nearly cut through that thinking it was part of the mould. If you buy this magazine, make sure to retain the nubbin. There's probably a more, technical word than nubbin there, but nubbin's the word I'm sticking with. So, obviously, it would be nice if I'd prepared this in advance, and I was just going to say, and here's all the parts I prepared earlier, but no, I only bought 2 of the magazines. I'd have bought more, but people like myself would have been out buying them all to prevent the children that this magazine's aimed at from getting into 40k. I imagine there was hordes of 40-year-olds out just buying the magazine in front of children, like 10 or 20 copies at a time just for the paints. I know I would have. These are actually my first Primaris Space Marines, and they are huge. The Plague Marines somehow match them, even though the Plague Marines are very much based on not Primaris Space Marines. Which feels like the Empire are going to have to go back to the drawing board and build even bigger Space Marines, so that they can be bigger than the Plague Marines. I did drive for the first time, because normally I glue everything together and then I'll paint it. But I saw some people saying online that you should paint things on the sprues. I found that to be a massive pain. And not even very effective, because there's loads of angles that you just can't get because the sprue's in the way. That's what they don't tell you on the internet. I mean, I'm sure it works for the people it works for, but it didn't work for me. Nearly at the end. Okay, super. Not so much to cut out. So often with 40k models, it's always best to exercise caution. You can cut more off. You can always glue stuff back on, but it's more of a faff. Whilst I'm here, I'm going to do the Plague Marines too. Collate all of the Space Marines. Actually, on my last set, I had some of these bits here that were broken because of shipping, but I bought this one from the like a newsagent's, and it seems to have survived its journey a lot better than mine. Something to watch out for in the future. It would be a bit crap if you got a better deal from getting it in the magazine, in the newsagents. I don't know why I want to call newsagents magazines now. And that's the point at which I should stop speaking. So yeah, all in all, I've got to say, because I've already fiddled with these models a fair amount, they're pretty good. Especially for the price. I mean, it would be nice if there was a bit more customization, a bit more choice of special weapons and such, but the price? Can't really argue with the price. I think it's like 10 quid for most of the sort of, maybe £5 for the Freeman easy assemble kits that they do. Designed to just sort of bulk up your army or get you into the hobby. There's not a good place to try and cut that without damaging the sprue. Got in there, excellent. I mean, there's always a standoff between ease of assembly and customization. Ease of assembly tends to limit customization, but sometimes the models that you get when they're sort of pre-designed into a posable stance are a bit more distinct than like 10 guys built from a kit wherein you're supposed to have like limitless options. But there's definitely not so much of an opportunity for dynamic poses. But then again, those dynamic poses become somewhat redundant if you've only got like a range of free models you can buy, and like individually they look really cool, but when you start stacking up a unit of like 15 or 20 of something with just the same like free same molds, looks pretty bad. So you know, they've probably struck the right balance. But if anyone has any gaming companies that have sort of a better balance than Games Workshop, send me a link. I'd be interested. You might think, oh, I'm not taking as much time with this as I probably could. But that's kind of my attitude with these models. with the painting of them too. It's been a long time since I painted in any sort of meaningful way. As such, I'm out of practice. So I'm just kind of doing it as the instructions dictate and seeing what the results are at the end. Like, you know, lots of people that this magazine is aimed at who won't have had very much experience with various different components of the hobby, whatever the words. Okay, I'm going to take a 5-second break and dig out the magazine. Okay then, so part 2. Let's get these Primaris fellas sorted out. Okay, so I'm going to be sorting them out into their respective kits. I'm pretty sure that's a word used in the wrong context. Okay, so my first test complete. I've separated blue from green, mostly. The instructions, or the magazine, wants you to build them as ultramarines, or rather paint them as ultramarines. I don't collect ultramarines, and I don't even like ultramarines, so that wasn't ever going to happen. So you've got Pointy Man, Gun in the Air Man on the right, Fellow a Little Tassel is the Gun in the Air Man. I think the backs are universal. So we'll give over. Oh no, one's got a pistol. That's going to be Pointy Man, the Sergeant. I'm assuming the other 2 backs are universal then. This man has a bit of a ribbon on his right shoulder. He's the man in the middle. Getting a bit anxious because I can only see 2 backs. Oh no, there's a back. Super. And they look relatively generic. But just for context, in the instructions, that's how they are. So, Pointy Man's going to have his hat off, because that's the way of sergeants in the 40k universe. He's got a little stub on his arm. One of the fun things about this is having to look around the camera. Okay, I think he's there. I think that's it. Oh, I'm torn. I think that's the sergeant. Okay, so I'm hoping these 2 heads are pretty much universal. And they do appear to be. And the sergeant, obviously, he's got his head out, because that makes sense. Now, you might think to yourself, it's time for me to put everything together and make sure it all fits properly. And then file down anything that looks as though it's not, you know, properly moulded. But I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to slop everything together with some glue. Because that's what I think the demographic for this probably would be most likely to have done. So let's start off with Pointy Hatless Sergeant Man. That's the in-game term for anyone unfamiliar with the 40k universe. So we need to pop his little head on. Then the instructions want his backpack, so we'll put a bit more glue on those stubs. It's far too much glue. Oh dear. Where was the one I was doing? I just kind of plonked him down. There we are. He's got his little head in there. That's fine. Really, when you're doing glue, you shouldn't stop because things get stuck like this. Well, that's quite the gap. I'm not content with that. I think it's his head's fault. Let's make sure his head's in the right pose. Then I'm sure we'll be able to close the neck. No. Oh god. I'm not happy with that. Okay, I'll just hold that until I believe it's set sufficiently, which it may never be able to be. Okay, that's my fault for trying to type on the Facebooks. It's not a complete disaster, but I still think a child probably would have done that better. And thus I guess we have a fair example of the level you should be expecting from anything that you see here if you find yourself watching this stream after the fact. That's not the direction he's supposed to be pointing. There we go. My problem with this magazine and the lack of customization is now I have 2 3-man squads of, I think, intercessors or something. Sounds like some sort of bureaucratic government body, which probably is appropriate for the 40k universe, to be fair. Oh, no. I just broken that? No. Not broken. Direction. So they don't even really want you to glue it anything but exactly like they've designed it. That's a better fit than my other one, because I've done what they effectively want me to. Anything distinct about your backpack? Not thinking there is. Okay. Whee! Okay, super. So the first step in the magazine, after you've glued the models together, is painting them with a base coat. They give you macarage, I can't ever remember. I don't even want to pronounce that right now. That blue. They give you that blue. And that they expect you to, you know, lower yourself by painting them up in ultramarines colours. But as I mentioned earlier, I collect Dark Angels, so I skipped that step. And also, the next colour that they want you to decorate the armour with is gold, effectively. And I think gold looks rubbish on Dark Angels, so I ignored that step also. As a guide for Conquest magazine and what they want you to do, this might not be the most efficient or accurate or effective or other, you know, positive words series you could be following. But in terms of someone that doesn't know what they're doing, prepared to go off out into the wild world and try their best despite knowing nothing, this is the channel for that. Okay, I'm going to learn from my experiences and point the head in roughly the right direction before squeezing as hard as I can. Still no. Maybe they're just stubborn models. I mean, that's quite It's quite spiky to do, I'm not going to lie. I didn't notice this with the last set that I built. Not the degree of like pain I'd be forced to endure to get it to stick together. Urgh. Okay, well, if you can see daylight through the model, that's not ideal. I'm disappointed enough with that I'm going to try and leverage it off. I don't think that's going to help. The moment I do that, the plastic's going to set inside. What do I have that can compress this without destroying it? Since trying to pull it off, I've definitively made that worse. Okay, well, you know, the magic of live TV. I've got to try and get that off. I'm not content. I'm going to cut the prongs a little bit shorter just in case that's a factor. He fits perfect. Of course, there we are. So I was going to never get that out, just for fun. I think it might be the head's fault, the necks specifically. Oh no, cutting the prongs shorter is perfect. Okay, well that's something. Anyone building this at home, cut the prongs a wee bit shorter if you have some issues. That would have left me really dissatisfied. If I was doing this myself, not in accordance with the instructions, I'd want to paint him before gluing this on. Because it's only going to lead to problems. I tells you. Bam. That's you done, son. And one more to go. Which at least makes it a lot easier in terms of selecting the parts. Unless you lose something. Well, they started taking a lot longer than I was intending. I've just seen this video's already this stream's already an hour long, which is more time than I intended to spend. Okay, I'm just going to slide that off camera rather than drive myself mad, which I think is literally the only other alternative when trying to pick them up. Excellent, okay. 3 partially undercoated Primaris Space Marine chaps. That's what it says in the codex. Space Marine chaps. Okay, these models I remember being a lot nicer to put together. And hopefully they won't disappoint. So, as before, rather than just building them on a pick and mix basis, I will sort them out first again. Now, I didn't undercoat these whilst they were on the sprue, because after doing that with the other lot, I realised it was painful. Pardon me, excuse me. It was a painful process that provided relatively patchy results. I'm doing everything by hand, I don't have an airbrush or something. Maybe if I had an airbrush, it would be easier. Okay, so he's the man on the left. The fella in the middle is taking a little shy step forward with a leftward lilt. Okay, so let's sort these things out component by component. You belong to you. You belong to you. There's a bit more diversity with the backpacks here. And I dare not deviate from the authorized building procedure. Chaos wouldn't like that. I guess Games Workshop had to do something to stop people from just like buying hundreds of copies of this magazine and not buying any models from them. Usually sitting in a warehouse with all the old Plague Guard models. I don't know why they're not selling. Key. All good. It feels like not enough bits, but okay. There's less of an imperative to do things in an ordered way, or particularly pay attention to the instructions on these ones. In the last ones, if you just went in without looking at the instructions, you might have naively made the mistake of gluing them together without a head. Though, to be honest, I don't think those neck stems for the heads really achieve very much. You know what? I'm just going to pop these arms on so I can paint these models easier. Games Workshop. I mean, they're not even directly advocating gluing the models in the most cases, so now it's just a case of me having to work out how to put these things on. Okay. And your sword arm. Let's hope that makes a bit more sense. Yeah, this will be a lot easier to glue this time around. To paint, rather. Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm gonna save myself some sanity later on. This way I can sort of undercoat them and then remove any parts that affect me from painting. Oh gosh, okay, we've got one tricky head. Just the one. And thus I need to be specific about which direction it faces. Otherwise his armour won't work. That's how armour works in the real world. You have to look in a specific direction, or all your chest plate just blows apart. Get on there. I can't have lost this basic level of articulation. Okay, super. Right then. So, what's going to happen now is, because I've already painted some fellas, and when you've finished painting them, according to the instructions that Games Workshop, that the magazine dictates, I say dictates, that sounds a bit strong, you'll end up with something a bit like this. Now, I've obviously painted mine green rather than blue, as the instructions dictate, and there's only one bit of detail painted. I've gone for a base coat of a lighter colour so that it can be built up. Probably should have gone for a grey and then dry brushed a white on top. Anyway, I wasn't thinking properly, and I'm well out of the habit. I just wanted to paint the same sort of decals and details that they were intending for you to paint in the colours they provided. So I'm going to be going my own path with the Dark Angels there, but I will follow more strictly. Where the Plague Marine's gone? I've got a bit of tidying up to do with these little fellas. Oh, that's a good way of making them last. I've got a bit of tidying up to do with these little fellas. But either I'll just show these now, or before I said this, I will have cut to me painting them. I set up 2 cameras as best as I could, so hopefully I can salvage something from that. Otherwise, you know, free Plague Marines, and we'll see how they build up over the months, assuming I can justify buying this magazine. For like around about a tenner, that's a reasonable amount of Games Workshop product, and that's excluding the 4 paints, the brush and whatnot. There is a tiny game that you can play with them. If the stream had been a tiny bit more successful in terms of numbers, I was contemplating having a try at setting that up. As is, I'll probably use this as a bit of a video, and hopefully next time I do a stream, I'll see you, or assuming anyone watches this video, there. But for now, thanks for watching. There's my main channel, which is Rebus Forever. There's a Patreon, and there's PayPal if you want to support the channel. And of course, good old-fashioned liking and subscribing, because I imagine I've got like 4 subscribers still.